Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ohio Christian Counseling Ministries Talk Show. I'm your host, Michael Pearson, and here we talk about God's people, His kingdom, and the manner in which we walk into that kingdom. Now, this is episode 3 of a 3-part series on narcissism, narcissistic abuse, and narcissistic abuse recovery. We've already talked about the habits, traits, the conditions, the circumstances in dealing with someone who's narcissistic. We talked about the manner of suffering involved and the games that people who are narcissistic play with their victims, and that is exactly what you are. If you're in a relationship with a narc, you are a victim or you are a prey, and they are most definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, they are most definitely a predator. So today, I want to take a further look and discuss some things in relation to how the narcissist affects the environment, because that is as much a issue and as much a big deal as anything else dealing with narcissism. As a matter of fact, it's probably even worse. Now, although you may have people who are narcissistic, it could be an aunt, it could be an uncle, it could be a spouse, it could be a husband, it could be a wife, it could be a grandparent, could be a brother, could be a sister. Anybody has the potential to eventually become narcissistic, because all of us have certain conditions, a past, certain traumas that we have to learn to get by and overcome and heal from. The difference between the average person and a narcissistic, somebody who has an NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, is the simple fact that they have learned to live with the condition. Now, of course, yes, they hate it, but they have learned to live with the condition. They have learned to create or generate this false self, this mask that they use to live in what is perceived to be a normal world and interact with everybody else. But the whole idea of this mask and this and this self that they create is to hide the pain, shame, hurt, abandonment, and trauma that they are ultimately carrying with them. So again, you may have a boss that may be narcissistic. You may have a auntie, uncle, family member, BFF. Anybody has the potential to be narcissistic. But the most disastrous, the most damaging relationship that a person can have with a narc is a relationship that is a love relationship, a relationship based on intimacy, a relationship based on togetherness, a relationship based on what is supposed to be love. Because most people who wind up in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic, and it may be extremely hard to believe this, but most people who wind up in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic, you're in that relationship for a reason. Because ultimately you have your own set of wounds, traumas, hurt, past situations, past set of circumstances that you've also never dealt with. And ultimately, that is what attracts the narcissist into your life. So when you meet with this person and you come together and you join, you fall hook, line, and sinker into the idealize, devalue, and discard pattern that people who are narcissistic tend to use against their victims, because they sell you. They completely sell you on the idealized phase, which gets you hooked. When they snatch the rug out from under you with the devalue stage, that hurts you. Then when they hit you with the discarding, that brings an even greater set of mental and emotional pain and trauma. That's why I call it a mind rape. It is emotional rape and mind rape. So what you're wanting is for that condition to stop. You want that to be over with. So then that's when they start with the hoovering, and they hoover you and they pull you all back in. Now I'm going to tell you an aspect of that 4-stage event that narcissists use: idealize, devalue, discard, and then hoovering. In this hoovering process, the tool that is most likely used in this hoovering process is sex. People who are narcissistic they have no reservations, right? They have absolutely no reservations. So they'll always come off and appear to be this sexual beast, because for them, it is not about the transferring of emotions or the transferring of energy. It is about them gaining the upper hand and getting you to a place where you are able to succumb or to reel you back in to get you in position where they can continue this process. So there's nothing that they won't do. They'll do just about anything sexually to get you back on the hook, to, and I guess to use a more common term, to get you sprung, right? Because they know you'll fall for it because you're in a position or in a state of wanting, in a state of needing. They've already diagnosed you. They've already had their eyes on you. They've already figured out exactly what your shortcomings are, or where your pain and where your hurt is. So they know you just like a book. So they'll use sex in the hoovering process to suck you back in. And I'm going to tell you why that is such an important thing, this hoovering process. They're willing to do anything because it intoxicates the lovemaking experience. What it does is it creates a soul tie, because what happens is the peptides start to fire in your brain because you're just wanting the hurt, the frustration, the discarding, the ignoring, not talking to you, wanting this stuff to just end. So when they make love with you, or when they start to hoover you, pull you back in, they actually become the savior to the very hell that they are putting you in. I want you to really, really think about that. They become the savior to the hell that they're ultimately putting you in and putting you through. And you go for it because you just simply want relief from this pattern and just to get your mind back. So when they start with this process of pulling you back in and sucking you in, these peptides start to fire in your brain, and it is a chemical reaction, and it is based on this chemical reaction that you create what is called a soul tie, or being trauma bonded to the narcissistic or to this individual. Once you become that, you're now in a place where you are definitely too far in to get out on your own. I've counseled many clients and got them to a point where they were to heal and recover from narcissistic abuse, and they never leave me in the same manner that they came. And each one, as they come to me in a place of wanting, needing, still firing off of those peptides from the discard or from the break, whether it is years apart or whether it is still living with someone and ultimately they are treating you a certain way in the home. These peptides are still firing, but they are also suffering in the process, and they've had just enough suffering to reach out and to get counseling. But when they do, they are already hooked. They are so hooked in that they absolutely cannot get out on their own. So in this hoovering process, in this lovemaking process, you just want to be able to exhale, right? You just want to be able to get to a point where you can just get your breath back, because this is literally a soul-sucking situation and set of circumstances. This is the epitome of hell, because you are actually living in a body that is torturing you. You are living and have developed a mind based on the abuse of this person that is ultimately working against you and torturing you. So you can, once this soul tie, once this trauma bond is connected, you cannot get out on your own. And just to be very, very clear on what a trauma bond is, because we've all been in relationships where you have a breakup and you feel like, you really need that person. You want that person back in your life. You'd like to, you miss them. You may drive past, we all have done crazy things in relationships. But what I am talking about is not the typical condition or circumstances or emotional state that a person will be in after breaking up and leaving a loved one. Because we've all dated people and we've all moved on and we've all had our moments of grief and sadness, but we have all been able to move on. But when we're talking about a trauma bond, what we're talking about is literally being addicted to the very thing that is hurting you. That is what a trauma bond is. And if this person in your life is narcissistic, and if they are hurting you, and if they're bringing pain and discomfort in a consistent pattern in your life, yet you also still feel a draw and an attraction to them, then you are trauma bonded, because you have an addiction based off of those peptides and the cycle. You have an addiction to something that is ultimately hurting you. And it is said that addiction is just as strong as heroin. So it's not something that you just get up and walk away from. It's something that requires healing. It's something that requires your spiritual and emotional health to be fine-tuned, and you need assistance to get out of it. You cannot just walk out of a relationship where you have been trauma bonded on your own. It's not something that people just customarily do. Now, when you have a home with a parent setup and one of them is narcissistic, the parent that is not has a hell that they live in, but there's also a family condition that is created based on the development or the habits of this narcissistic person. Most of the time, the people who are in marriages with somebody who's narcissistic and there's children, or there's a family dynamic, most of the time, the spouse who is not a narc, they succumb to the abuses of the narc in an attempt to help protect, to help keep at ease, even if it's just to keep a smile on the family's face, even if it's just so they have some sense of joy that wouldn't ordinarily be there if that parent was not in place. So they more or less go into a role of being a servant to the family in opposition to the hell that this narc is putting them in. And from the outside, a family even with a narc in it, from the outside, it can look absolutely beautiful. It can look like the absolute perfect marriage, the absolute perfect home. Everything from the outside can appear to be so pristine and beautiful. But there is a term for that condition, and that is called pseudo-mutuality. Pseudo-mutuality is, in essence, what Jesus called a whitewashed tomb. Outside is pristine and clean, and it's whitewashed. But on the inside, it is decaying and rotting and passing away. Pseudo-mutuality is very much so stamped onto homes where there's a narcissistic member in the head, in the parenting dynamic. It is now not just a hell where the loved one, the lover, is sharing in this hell, but it is now also a hell that the entire family is being exposed to. And I love the term whitewashed tombs because it puts focus where it needs to be, that the outside world will perceive it one way, but on the inside, it is a slow, decaying, and rotting death on the inside. Not just a death. Now, believe me, the effect is very much physical, but the slow death that takes place on the inside is in your being, your dreams, your hope, your joy, your peace, your ability to just be comfort. All of these things become daily. There's daily attacks on just establishing these things when there's someone in the home who is narcissistic. Just common things that ordinarily should not be an issue, as far as food, finances, things of that nature. Common things that should not be an issue, all of a sudden they become a tremendous issue and a point of extreme stress and trauma, just based on the way that the narc decides that they want to handle things. It's because they position themselves in a place of control. Remember, one of the traits of a narcissist is a grandiose personality. So they absolutely 100% will not submit or succumb to being anything other than in control. That is the dynamic that they function by. So I want to give you some of the family conditions, because I think this is very, very valuable, just as I did with the other steps or traits of the narcissistic process. I want you to understand the family conditions that could exist as a result of having or sharing a home with someone who is narcissistic. because I think a lot of times people are not familiar with experiencing a narc because it is something that is so well hidden. And once they hear it, then pieces start to fall in place. Once they get an earful of the information, then they start to identify tactics, outcomes, circumstances, habits. They start to identify and see these things as something that is actually playing out in their own lives. So I want to take the time to kind of go through these family conditions that's associated with a narc that creates a dynamic of the pseudo-mutuality type of family construct, which is what Jesus also considers, and what the phrase that Jesus used. He wasn't actually talking about the family dynamic. He was talking about, I believe, the Pharisees. But when he talks about whitewashed tombs, which I believe is very fitting of pseudo-mutuality and the condition of the narcissistic home. Okay, let's go through these family conditions. And hopefully this will resonate with you and you'll understand, and this will assist you in being able to put some of these pieces together so that you know that you're not crazy, that you're not, because that's what will happen. When you're dealing with somebody who's narcissistic, they'll make you question your own sanity. That's gaslighting. First is acceptance based on a narcissistic home where a narcissist is heading it. Acceptance is based on conditions. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Everything about each individual is based on, they are only accepted based on certain conditions, based on their certain performances, based on certain things that's done. If you don't do A, then the narcissist doesn't comply in C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z, just because of one thing. So that's a very important aspect of it. Second is submission is absolutely necessary. Now, this submission is in regards to everything. This is in regards to your business, your finances, your dating, your texts, your phone calls, your bills, your transportation, where you come, where you go, where you've been, in between where you're going and where you've been. Absolute complete submission is absolutely necessary to them because of the grandiose personality. They absolutely will not conform to anything other than their ability to rule and govern and be the head of. So submission is absolutely necessary. That is the only way it will effectively work for them, for the narc. Absolutely, it is not effective for a healthy family dynamic. What you feel is wrong. This is part of kind of goes in with the gaslighting, where you kind of start to get the crazies, because in spite of what this person does to you, in spite of what this person does for you, and I say this all the time, you can't take the good or the bad to heart, because when something good is done, there's a reason. When something bad is done, there's also a reason. So you can't take anything to heart. But the fact of the matter is, regardless to what they do to you, what you feel is absolutely 100% wrong. Your feelings are invalid. They will tell you what you feel. They will bring into question what you feel. So what you feel becomes absolutely invalid. The narc's rage is normalized. People who are narcissistic are very, very angry and miserable people. So they have this narcissistic rage, and sometimes it's cinematic, to keep control, to keep you in a certain place. There's no limit to how far they will go, or what they won't, or what they won't do, or what they will do to get you to. If they see you slipping a little bit out of control, they'll do and say just about anything to get you back under their control. So their narcissistic rage is normalized as normal behavior. Again, this kind of goes with invalidating your feelings. Because if you question them on certain things, they do not take accountability for their actions. So the behavior that you are being exposed to ultimately becomes normalized. You start to accept this behavior as just part of the process, as just part of the living arrangement, part of the living environment. So that's also a very, very big one. Someone has to be blamed for all problems. Nothing is just circumstantial. Everybody has to be assigned blame for something, no matter what has happened. If something has happened, then the narcissist has to apply blame to someone, but never to themselves. Only to those in the house who they choose, but also never to the golden child. The golden child also never takes blame. Now we'll get to that later. You just hold on. We'll get to the golden child. But the two people who will never get blame is the golden child and the narcissistic person themselves. Blame is distributed to everybody else, but they are excluded at all times. Shaming is appropriate even for mistakes. Now, it's unlike a narcissist to be sympathetic or empathetic for any reason. It's just not a trait that they have. They cannot do it. Under normal circumstances, we feel what other people feel. We have compassion. We empathize. We put ourselves, even if we haven't experienced it, we can put ourselves in a situation where we can empathize with the person in their condition and what they may be experiencing or going through. But the narc is, they will shame you, even for your mistakes. Even something that is genuinely an error, they will shame you for that. They are no holds barred. They do not care. They are emotionless. So if you make a mistake, you cannot look for them to be compassionate. You cannot look for them to be understanding. If it is a mistake, even if it's in the moment, it is not put on display. I can assure you, at some point, that mistake will come back to haunt you because they file everything that happens, even your mistakes. Only the narc and who they choose, which is usually the golden child, is worthy of respect and love. They will step on practically any and everybody in the home, even children. You have to understand that that nobody is off limits except for this golden child. And as I said, I'm going to get to that. But they are the only two people that deserve any respect, they are the only two worth fighting for. They are the only two with the right to be able to do. They are the only two with the freedom to be able to have and to move and to operate. That's how that is set up. Favoritism is pleasing, so the narc loves favor. And this goes back to what I just said earlier. Birthday parties, celebrations, putting things together. It would appear by the receiver that this is a loving act done for me on my behalf. But in all actuality, it is a show for the narc of, look what I've done. Look what I put together. Look how I did this. So favoritism is a must. They have to be favored. They love favor. It's much, much, much different than the favor that most of us look for in our relationship with God, right? That favor is different. That is God in his grace and in his mercy, in spite of giving us certain opportunities, certain benefits out of his love for us. No. The favor from a narc is simply self-gain. It is all about them. Nobody contributes, not even the one who may be the benefactor or the beneficiary of the good deed that is being that is being created or acted out. So, lastly, appearance is more important than substance. People who are narcissistic are oftentimes very materialistic. They care about the external, because you have to remember, what's inside they despise. So everything becomes about the presentation. Everything becomes about what's going on externally. Everything becomes more important about what car I drive, what clothes I wear, everything is external. Everything. It is a matter of them wanting to, once again, as an individual, create this facade and this image that is very, very believable, because most people narcissistic are very charming. But they have to create this facade to get people to buy into this image that they're creating of themselves, which is the polar opposite of who they really are on the inside. So those are some of the family conditions that come up in a narcissist, in a home where a narcissist is in control and is in rule. There's more. There's absolutely a lot more besides just those. Those are pretty much the basics. Now, if these are things that you are experiencing, and I can assure you of this, it's not so much a matter that you will experience one or two of these. If you're in the home of a narcissistic individual, somebody who has a narcissistic personality disorder, you will experience every single one. If you've met one, you've met them all. They do not stray far from this cycle because this is the pattern of dysfunction, hurt, pain, and trauma that exists and lives inside of them. So they do not stray far from that, from what they are, from what it is that they are trying to ultimately hide on the inside. Now, inside that dynamic, inside of this family dynamic, there's one who is considered a scapegoat. There's always a scapegoat. Sometimes there may be two, sometimes there could be three. It all depends on the size of the family and how this is set up, and who the narc decides that, or who they choose to be in the position of a scapegoat. Now, the scapegoat is exactly, or it's oftentimes what some people may call, but I don't want to necessarily confuse the two, but it's also what some people may call the black sheep of the family. This is somebody who is ultimately, the blame for most things is heaped onto this person. This person becomes a symbol of everything that is wrong inside of the family dynamic. This is all pushed onto this individual. This individual usually is the person in the family dynamic who wises up first, because they take, for the most part, the brunt of the impact of the dysfunction that is going on in a family, and they also take the brunt of the abuse, for the most part, that is going on from the from whichever narc parent it is that is governing the family or ruling the family. So that scapegoat role could be you. It absolutely could be you. And if it is, then the message that I send in that case is, understand that it has nothing to do with you. You're just fine. Understand that you need some help. You need some therapy, some counseling, because it is very unnatural to have a parent that would behave in such a way as this, and you can come out of this unscathed, because it's impossible. It's not something that you can do. So, being the scapegoat or the black sheep of the scape. Let me just stick with the scapegoat of the family. A lot has been thrown on you, and this has been thrown on you unfairly. And I know it can oftentimes make you feel like, in some way, shape, or fashion, it would even make you question your own ability to receive love. But I can assure you that should not be the case. You probably need counseling, you probably need therapy, but I can assure you that the issue and the burdens that you carry are not yours. You've inherited that from someone who is tremendously dysfunctional, does not have a heart, and was never in a position to give to you what you needed. So take that and put that down. That's not your stuff to carry. Even putting it down, though, you still need to be washed in the format of counseling or therapy, so that you can get release from the pressure and the time that you've spent carrying something like that. Now, finally, and I said I would get to this, as I mentioned earlier, inside of this family dynamic, there is what is considered the golden child. Now, the golden child is the child that is put on a pedestal and stays there for the most part throughout the family dynamic. This child is never wrong. This child is given privileges. The rules are broken for this child. This child is able to live contrary to the rules, the governing just the overall nature of the home. The narc, in a sense, needs this child because this is the last hat, the last rack that the narcissist has the ability to lay their hat on. The golden child is who the narc lives through. The golden child lives through the as the golden child. I mean, as the narc has a false self. Well, eventually this golden child becomes symbolic or an extension of the narc, and that is why the narc will fight tooth and nail to protect, take care of, look after, circumvent the family structure for the sake of the golden child. But understand this: these actions and these things done, this performance that is put on for the sake of the golden child, could be perceived as, well, the narc has more love for the golden child than they have for the rest of the family. Again, that is absolutely not the case. The golden child is usually so manipulated and controlled that they will not and cannot act in defiance of the narc, because the narc has tremendously poured into them so much that even the idea of the things, the treatment, because the golden child sees how everybody else is treated, and the golden child becomes fearful of that treatment. So the idea of not being the golden child becomes a horror and a hell. It's not that this golden child does not understand. I think they do. They absolutely understand. But the ability to break away from it becomes such a great challenge, because just like the other people in the household that have a love for the, for that particular person, yet can slowly start to see some of the issues, even the development of the golden child. The golden child doesn't get to see it that way. They only get to see it from the perspective of mostly their needs and the posh lifestyle that is given to them, of devoid of consequences. And that's what they see. It is such a toxic and dysfunctional false sense of freedom that it's also a very, very easy sell. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, then reach out to me at 513-238-2607 at Ohio Christian Counseling Ministries, and we can start this process of healing. Everyone in the home has the option to be healed, to look this in the face and decide, this will not be my life, and take the necessary steps to start to heal yourself and start to build a life that is for you, and is a life that that reflects the calling that God has on your life, because God wants the best for each and every one of us. He doesn't want us to be trapped in tombs that are externally may present some form of togetherness, and on the inside we are just rotting and dying and going to hell. That is not what God wants for us. So again, my name is Michael Pearson. I thank you for tuning in to the last episode of this 3-part series, and I look so forward to sharing more information with you again. Thank you.